my coffee and today's guest here with me, so we're ready to roll. Welcome to today's Circular Coffee Break podcast, where we will be casually talking about everything circular and beyond. Now, when we started the podcast originally, I think we never thought that we would hit 20 plus episodes and would basically have listeners that are listening to the podcast continuously. So thanks to all of you out there listening to the podcast every 2 weeks as it comes out. We would like to provide you with ideas, insights around circularity and sustainability, but we cannot do that without you. So from that point of view, we're really eager to hear your thoughts, ideas, feedback, whatever you want to share with us. Please leave a comment or a note on your favorite podcasting platform or send us an email at circularcoffeebreak@gmail.com. We're always looking to improve and develop, so let's discuss and let's hear what you think about the podcast. Now, my guest today has a long history in sustainability and circularity. He started off his career in the automotive industry, where he spent 22 years in different roles at Daimler and Smart Europe. Some of the roles he held were in organization and change management, supplier development, process, project, and contract management, as well as sustainability. From there, he has been taking on multiple initiatives, activities, and roles around circular economy. So since August 2019, he is an organizer of the Circular Economy Club and the founder and director of Materialkreislauf.studio. In 2020, he founded the Circular Lab, initiated the Future.positive event, and started the Müll ist Mist podcast, which is available in German. Since 2020, he is also the director of the Steinbeis Consulting Center Circular Economy. And since 2021, he's part of 5P, a cooperative community of consultants, facilitators, clients, and supporters. Most recently, he became a partner in To Be Different, a sustainability advisory for the event industry. And if all of that wouldn't be enough, he is also engaged as a food saver at Food Sharing, an international movement that campaigns against food waste. I think it's fair to call him a Tausendsasser or jack of all trades of the circular economy community. Welcome to the show, Christoph Soukup.
Hello, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. And I mean, you're doing a lot of things in sustainability and circularity, and you have been part of the scene in Germany and more specifically Stuttgart for a long time. Now, how do you think the world has changed in the past 10 years? And what are currently, from your point of view, from your experience, the biggest opportunities and challenges you're seeing?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question to start with. Actually, I would say, looking back 2 years, you wouldn't see too much of a circular economy movement in the German-speaking countries. Not yet. When I started out with my consulting business in circularity, most of the times had to explain what circularity is as such and why it could make sense to consider circularity as a business approach. Whereas nowadays, and this only began maybe 6 or 8 months ago, it has been understood that circularity might be an approach for the future way of doing business, and it's rather that companies address us with the question: how can we make it approachable for us as a company? How can we integrate it in the way we do our business, into our business models? So this is really very, very recent development. And I sometimes say to some of my clients, in kind of a kidding way, that Germany is still a developing country in terms of circularity, or the German-speaking countries as such, Germany, Austria, and also Switzerland, which is a little ahead of the other two German-speaking countries.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think the topic has become much more known and has gotten much more focus in the C-level, in the broader corporate world, but also in society. I think people are talking more about the topic and are more knowledgeable about the topic.
Yeah. And you were asking about the main challenges.
Yeah.
I would like to answer, to give my take on that briefly. For me, the main challenge right now is to get companies going on the one hand, but also to get them understand that usually a circular economy or a circular economy business model is not something they can do on their own. In the past, companies usually had a problem, tackled it, solved it, and went on to the next problem. Nowadays, with the circular economy approach, companies have to learn and really understand that this is not something, in the most of the cases, that they will do alone and solve alone, but they rather need an ecosystem they have to build up in which they can solve their challenges together with other partners, some of which they don't even know today.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's becoming more and more an ecosystem, a value chain problem than a company problem in that
Exactly.
context. I fully agree. Now, you have recently been working with small and medium sized companies in your role at Steinbeis Consulting Center Circular Economy. Now, we all know that specifically small and medium sized enterprises sometimes struggle on their journey to circularity as they do not necessarily have the resources required, the knowledge required to address this very complex topic. Could you share some of the best practices you've been seeing specifically for small and medium-sized enterprises in order to get started on the journey? You already mentioned a little bit of that. And how do the needs and approaches differ in your experience from those of large and international enterprises in the small and medium-sized enterprise area?
Let me start with the second question first. How do they differ maybe from big international corporations? I would say from my experience in a big international, multinational company, those usually tend to solve topics strategically. So they write strategies. How shall we approach a certain topic? And then see in the next step how this is going to trickle down into the business context. But rather they come from a strategic approach where they tend or want to understand what the topic is about, what is in it for them, how they could approach it. Whereas small and medium-sized companies usually are very solution-oriented. Small and medium-sized companies usually tend to look at new topics from a very pragmatic and solution-oriented, with a very pragmatic and solution-oriented approach. So they want to see solutions. They want to understand how it's going to affect their business and really implement solutions into their business right away. They don't have this strategic layer in between. I mean, they do have it in terms of those being in charge of the company. They have to have the strategic vision, but usually they are much more solution oriented, much more pragmatic, much more hands-on. And so I don't know if this is a best practice, but the way we handle it in our Steinbeis Beratungszentrum Circular Economy is that we offer companies what we call a circular test bench. When we come together with them, we meet for a day and a half, or maybe in the best case, 2 days. And we really start with building some understanding. What is circularity all about? What are the main strategies to approach circularity? And then we really delve into hands-on questions. We put one of their main or their favorite products on this test bench, which is, let's say, a virtual test bench. And we ask, how, with all of these 10 R strategies, from refuse to recycle, how all of these strategies could help their current product in getting more circular. So in the first step, we don't do anything with their products. We just think about what could be an approach that would help get these products, as they are today, more circular in their offering. And this helps companies to understand circularity as such, but also the implications on their products or their product portfolio, and what could be a feasible way to undertake the first steps. And if they are interested, we can go a little further and do some design thinking process with 2 or 3 of the most promising strategies we elaborate in these 2 days to really get prototypes which they can test quickly and see what the results, what the response in the market is, and so on and so forth, to really go forward towards more circularity in their products and their business model.
Sounds very interesting, and I agree with you. I think it's about really pragmatically understand what circularity means in the context of one's own products, one's own operations, that helps small and medium-sized enterprises to really dive into circularity and understand what are pragmatic steps to take here. You also work with public organizations, for example, the city of Stuttgart, in their activities around circularity. Can you tell us a little bit about your work there, how you're doing things there, how you're approaching things there, and how you see the role of cities and municipalities in the broader transition towards a sustainable circular world?
That's a question really very close to my heart, at least my professional heart, because I do see cities play a central role in our transformation, or in the transformation of our economic operating system from a linear one to a more circular, or a clearly circular one. So this is something I started right out from the beginning to work with cities. But working with cities really means working on a dickes Brett, as we would say in German. So really a complex task, because you don't go to a city administration and say, hey, let's work on circular economy, and they rush with you and say, okay, what's next? Where can we go? It really started out with a discussion of, okay, climate, circular economy is a good idea, but we have to work on climate issues, and we have to fix that first before we can go into circular economy topics. So they didn't see the connection between climate change and circular economy at all at the beginning, 2 years back or 3 years back even. Nowadays, they say, okay, it saves, or it helps us solve our issues in scope 3, if you think in emission scopes, because usually the balance sheet, at least in the German logic, ends at the signs of the city limits. All that is happening outside is not in scope, as many companies still do. No? They stop their calculation of a CO2 footprint at scope 2 and don't go beyond. Whereas we all know that up to 80, 90% of what's happening in emission-wise is happening out there in scope 3. So nowadays they say, and they have understood, that circular economy can help them solve climate issues, or climate emission issues, let's say. And now we really work together quite closely. What we started to do this year, or what we have done already this year, is we started to, as you always do, with an inventory. We set up what we call a Stoffstromanalyse, which is a material flow balance sheet, to understand how big is the intake of material of the city of Stuttgart and its surrounding region. Where does it go? What happens there? Does it go into stock, or does it go into a product? Does it leave the region? Does it stay? And how much of this intake is really taken in circles? Similar to what circular economy does on a global scale. Listeners might be familiar with the Global Circularity Gap report they do every year. Very similar proceeding. But the challenge here is really to find a good way to calculate it down to a city and region level. Because usually you don't have figures, you only have it at a national level or international level, a global scale. So we have worked with the Potsdam Institute for Klimafolgenforschung, quite renowned institute, with a scientist from there, and found a good way to really break it down to the Stuttgart and Stuttgart region level. And now, next step will be to publicize those results. By the way, it's not surprising, really, around, I should maybe not say the exact number yet, but around between 10 and 15%, the circularity rate, which means, okay, it's good there compared to, let's say, the global circularity rate of 7.2 or 3%, I think. But there's still quite some room for improvement. And what we hope to see is, as we have broken down those figures to the Stuttgart and regional level, to really invite companies to come on board and say, okay, we want to be part of the solution, bring the circularity rate up. What can be solutions on a collaborative scale, on a collaboration level, that we together as companies and also actors from administration, also private people, but mainly especially companies, can what can be the solutions that we can improve the rate of circularity we have right now. And that's not only the hope, but that is also the intention why we did that. And the second example would be, if I have the time, if you give me the time to explain that a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
What we are in the process of setting up a circularity lab. That's maybe the working title. Maybe we'll find a nicer title at the end. But the idea is clear. It's a place right in the middle of town where all those people in the Stuttgart area working on circularity aspects come together. There will be a co-working, there will be an exhibition space, there will be a cafe where saved food will be offered, there will be a second-hand shopping center curated by the Waste Management Authority of the city of Stuttgart, and they will only bring things that have been thrown away to the second-hand shopping center. I mean, it's not a new idea. It exists in Eskilstuna in Sweden. It exists in Berlin, some other places. But the important thing is not to bring something new, but good solutions that are already there to the region. That's what we hope to see there. And it should start in March next year. So slowly but surely, we are seeing progress on the city level, how circular economy gets visible, gets palpable. And I think that's really, really a very crucial element to get going in the circular space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one big thing is we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, if you go back quite some time, I mean, it was completely normal to repair things, to use things for a long period, to reuse things, to refurbish things. But we have unlearned that over the years. We've basically learned this throwaway culture instead of the circular culture. So I think it's extremely important and extremely good to learn from good examples and be open to see best practices, how they work elsewhere, and fall not into this not invented here trap. Where you need to reinvent everything, because that will slow you down and worst case will force you to make mistakes that others have done before that you could have avoided. Now, we talked about SMEs, we talked about cities, and a lot of the activities that you mentioned and that you're working on are focused around building communities, bringing people together, educating people, as you just mentioned, share best practices in that context. And in the shift towards sustainable circularity, we're looking at a systemic change that involves a really wide range of stakeholders within the city limits, but also outside of those. Based on your experience with SMEs, with cities, on that intersection between those, where do you think we are today as a society, but also as individual stakeholders in our understanding what it takes to work towards a global sustainable circular economy, and also to understand what is the right path, what are the right actions in that context?
You mentioned, Michael, that actually circular economy concepts are not something really new. It's maybe new in the context we live in nowadays, with a very wealthy context, with a very industrially evolved context. Whereas in former times, it was rather a circular economy of poorness. We have now the task, or we want to try probably to really get the circular economy going within a context of richness or abundance. So that's really maybe the task. Where are we in terms of mindset and awareness? The Hans Sauer Stiftung, a very powerful Stiftung, not powerful in terms of money, but in terms of what they do conceptually in Germany, they talk about the circular society, and they say circular economy stays void unless it's embedded within the context of a circular society and the thinking of a circular society. And I perceive, I'm convinced they have a point, a fair point. I don't see too much of a circular society yet. And that's why we also know in our work, we also need to do some mindset work, because otherwise all circular economy activities that shall have a long-lasting impact will not grow and thrive. It's a mindset question. You really have to understand it conceptually and also within your guts. That's not something you can do by a pedagogic afternoon only and telling people why circular economy is important. It really has to, get people, and they have to get it.
Click. Yeah.
I mean, we do see it in our workshops every now and then that a glow in the eyes of some of the participants starts to shimmer. And this is usually the moment where they start to understand the beauty of circular economy solutions, as a concept at least. Usually it goes, probably you know that as well, Michael, along with a valley of deception and hard work afterwards, because then you realize if we really want to get that going for our company and our business model, this is tough work. We have to really change our business model. We have to partner up with partners we don't even know yet, maybe. So it's a two-sided medal. But usually in our workshops, we experience that moment where I start to glimmer and people get the beauty of the idea. And that's a magical moment, I think, because then people are really on board, and maybe some mindset, maybe not change, but some impulses take grip of those people to change their mindset. And that's what we need, but I don't see it on a broad scale yet, not in the German-speaking countries.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think it has to click somehow that they realize what it is. What encourages me is seeing the younger generation. So looking at my sons, at their friends, they go downtown to do shopping, and they basically exchange ideas on the best secondhand places. They go from one secondhand place to the other, and here in Finland, you see secondhand places pop up in each and every shopping mall. 3, 4, 5 secondhand places nowadays, and they're very well frequented. So I think that is something you're seeing happening. Is it happening in the pace we need? Is it happening among the wider society? Unfortunately, I don't think so yet. But I think, as you said, we see the movements, we see the people that start realizing what does it mean, what could it also mean for me in that context.
And I'm pretty sure your sons, similarly to my daughter who is 15, they don't do it because they say it's so cheap, or it's the best thing to do for the world. They do it because it's cool and they like it, they love it, and they love the excitement of finding something you wouldn't know of half an hour before, or you wouldn't even have the idea of getting it for you. So that's really something, a glimmer of hope in terms of circular economy ideas not getting through because people say it makes sense from an intellectual standpoint, but because it's fun. It's fun and it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. I think as you mentioned, it's a mindset, it's a lifestyle kind of approach rather than a like I have to do it kind of approach. I fully agree. Now, in preparation for today's podcast, I noticed one thing. I noticed that you are in the expert council of VfB Stuttgart. Which focuses on the sustainable footprint of football fans. And I personally follow the Bundesliga quite closely, and VfB Stuttgart is actually doing really well this season so far. And I'm definitely sure that it's because of you being in the expert council. That's the number one reason.
That's the
for
punchline I wanted to make. But anyways, I cede it to you.
Now, sustainability in sports has been gaining some momentum in recent years. Can you share some topics you're looking at in that context? How are football clubs with a long tradition like VfB Stuttgart are approaching these topics, and how do they basically convey the topic to fans, which are not necessarily always the ones that have sustainability in the front of their thoughts when they come to the stadium during the weekend to see a match, for example?
Yeah, similarly to our children, your sons and my daughter. That's true. That's I think that's really the challenge, but that's also the possibility we have, because we can address those people with, in a broader sense, sustainability topics or issues, aspects, without showing them our index finger and saying, you have to do like this, you have to act like this, but rather offering them solutions that make sense for them, that they feel invited to explore, and then gradually but surely change behavior. And that's how we are going to approach it. We just started out. So we just had our founding meeting in September. You don't see any impact of our work right now because we don't even took the first decisions, except for how do we work together. But you can already see how what we might do, and our work will be centered around how can we make the participating as a fan in a football match, how can we make it more sustainable without continuously telling fans you have to do like this, you have to behave like that, but rather offering solutions that might be interesting to explore and might be fun. So we don't I personally don't see the vegan Wurst in the stadion as a forced offer, but rather something we gonna implement in a fun and playful way. So we don't introduce a Stadion Wurst, stadium sausage, just by telling people you have to eat vegan sausages right now and you don't get any meat sausage as an alternative anymore. But we rather will introduce a fun and playful way of offering such a sausage. Maybe even we can gain one of the players acting as role model and telling people about the advantages of trying out a vegan sausage in the arena. So it will be all about light and playful, in a amical tone, and not so much about showing what people have to do. And if our work is successful, I think we're gonna follow this path and bring in some solutions that some of them might go well, others will not work out at the first time. But the good thing is that the decision makers within the club are really ready to go on a journey there. They don't start out with, okay, now we have an Expertenbeirat, expert committee, now we all set, but they rather say, okay, we have an expert committee to go now on this journey, and that will accompany us on this journey. So again, we getting back to the journey, which is an elemental or a crucial element of everything on this pathway towards the circular economy solutions. That's also why I said yes, as I was asked if I wanted to join the expert committee. Their attitude of we are going on quite a long journey.
Cool. No, and I think, I mean, sports has been for a long time this bastion of like you do things in a traditional way, specifically for traditional clubs. We've always been doing it this way, and I think that is changing. So I also had a discussion with Sport 5, one of the big sports agencies in Germany. Or globally, actually, and how they see sustainability in sports, and it's becoming a thing. It's really something that a lot of clubs, a lot of different organizations starting to really look into. So it's great to see that clubs like VfB Stuttgart are really taking this forward and taking it serious. To actually make game day and all the other days really sustainable in that way. Cool. The coffee is empty. Unfortunately, we have to
Exactly,
wrap up
yes.
here. It was great talking with you, Christoph. I could still continue for another half hour easily. Thanks a lot for joining me today and for opening up a little bit your experience with SMEs, with cities, and in the sports realm.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael. It was a pleasure to be here, and also polishing up my English again a little bit because I only work in German. 99% of my work is done in German, so I'm really I really got a little lazy on my English capacity. Thanks for offering that possibility too.
Perfect. Thanks a lot for joining. And let's see, maybe we can do that again sometime in the future once the work with the expert council and the activities with the city of Stuttgart are progressing, because I think these are really great experiences to share with a broader audience.
With quite some pleasure.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, for all of you listening out there, we hope there were some new nuggets in today's episode, some new ideas, some new things that you can test, either if you're an SME, if you're a city, if you're part of a sports club, or if you in any other capacity want to take circularity or sustainability initiatives forward. That's the whole idea behind the Circular Coffee Break, to basically get ideas, get new impulses, get new things to think and talk about. So from that point of view, we hope today's episode did the job. If you like the podcast, you can help us out growing the Circular Coffee Break community by giving us a 5-star rating and a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever other podcast platform you're using, to spread the word, get more people to listen, to be active on the topic. As said, it's a topic that's close to our heart, and where we would like to get as many people involved as possible. Now, the only thing left is to thank you for listening today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all here at the Circular Coffee Break.